the call to the member for Hartley.
Thank you, Speaker. I too would like to congratulate you on the elevation of your role, and a heartfelt congratulations to all of my parliamentary colleagues on their recent election success. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land on which I give my speech today, the land of the Kaurna people. I pay my deepest respects to their elders past and present. I acknowledge that this land was, is, and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be First Nations country. It's an absolute honour to have been elected by the people of Hartley, and it's an incredible privilege to be standing before you today. I want to thank the voters from the bottom of my heart for placing your trust in me. I will never forget who I'm here to serve. I also want to thank my village of friends who are here today and who have been there at every turn, especially to my bestie, Jess. This woman delivered me a mini Thanksgiving dinner to my house last November because she knew how much the tradition meant to me, but also knew I would never have the time to cook it myself whilst in the thick of campaigning. My beautiful children, Lucy and Terrence, I am so proud to be your mum. You're my constant motivation, my biggest supporters, and my greatest joys. Thank you for your patience, your love, and for being there through every step of this journey. Lucy, I didn't personally meet your Grandpa Terry, but I know in my heart he would be absolutely stoked by your joining the Labour Party a few weeks ago. Tim, I truly cannot imagine having a better person by my side. You've given me ideas, perspective, encouragement, and plenty of advice, some of which I didn't always want to hear at the time, but which more often than not turned out to be exactly right. Nearly 18 years together, and I think you've made me laugh every single day, starting from the day we met when you tried to convince me that you were a member of the Wiggles. When you marry someone like Tim, you don't just inherit values of public service, you also inherit a truly extensive collection of political memorabilia, which has quite literally followed us across cities and continents. At this point, I think it's fair to say it's as committed to the journey as we are. For those of you who don't know, Tim's dad, the Honourable Terry Roberts, was a minister from the other place from 1985 until his death in 2006. For a long time, Tim thought about following in his father's footsteps. But when the time came, he somehow knew, well before me, that I was the right person for the job. And he has backed me every single step of the way. Tim, thank you for being my best friend, my sounding board, my support, and my guiding light. To my beautiful mom, who was here for the election and is now watching online from Texas at 2:30 in the morning, thank you for always being there, for the long phone calls, and for your unwavering belief in me. To my lovely mother-in-law, Liz, thank you for your support, for your helping with the children, and for making my campaign possible in so many ways. And to my brother-in-law, Nick, a man of few words but infinite wisdom, thank you for showing your support by always sending a thumbs up to my texts. Thank you to the Premier, the ministers, and the MPs from this place and the other, former and current, who offered their support during the campaign, and a huge thank you to my entire campaign team. Josh, affectionately known as Joshy in our house. I cannot thank you enough for your calm leadership and incredible ability to steer the campaign through every challenge. I'm confident I wouldn't be standing here today without your steady guidance and daily texts asking me what I was up to for the day, as if the response wasn't going to be door knocking. I'll never forget the moment I saw you on election night after we knew I'd won. I could see the pride beaming from your face. Ella, Jude, James, Declan, Anton, Cam, Andrew, and our entire incredible team of volunteers, Rhiannon, Isaac, April, Raghu, Sima, Ollie, Billy, Sarah, Jane, Ellie, Ben, Grace, and the countless others who were involved. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. A very special thanks to Kevin and Archer, who have now joined me in my electorate office. I don't think there was a campaign activity that one of you didn't show up to. and I thank you for your loyalty and for believing in me. Thank you, Judy Black, a legend in Hartley, for taking me along to so many events and introducing me to so many new people in the community. I think you could see my determination from the first moment we met. Karen and Hamish, your support has been unwavering, and my many thanks to you both, Eamon, and everyone at Party Office. A massive thank you to the union movement, Abby and the Australian Services Union, of which I am a very proud member, Demi and the United Workers Union, and Stuart and the AMWU, Liz and the CPSU, Josh and the SDA. Adam, I will be forever grateful for you coming in to manage my office and convincing Matt to come along. I'm still not sure how you were able to get the keys so quickly to the office. I know I'm in good hands. And I want to say grazie to the member from Morialta for helping to deepen my ties with the Italian community in the East and for becoming such a great family friend. I also want to thank the former member for Hartley, Vincent Tarzia, for his contributions to the community over the past 12 years. I truly appreciated the cordial nature of the campaign. All of the candidates and volunteers, regardless of our differing opinions, made the 7 days of early voting bearable. A special thanks to Melanie Searle, who I got to know so much better over those long days. Speaker, I am an immigrant. Whilst extremely time-consuming and expensive, I acknowledge that my passage to Australia was a relatively easy process compared to so many others. I also understand that immigration has become a divisive issue in Australia, but I truly believe that we diminish ourselves when we reduce people to rhetoric instead of recognizing their humanity, their contributions, and the courage it takes to build a new life, to build a life in a new country, just like I have. I've learned through this process and since the election that I am the first American-born South Australian Member of Parliament since 1905, when John Greeley Jenkins, born in Pennsylvania, was the Premier of our great state. Coincidentally, Mr. Jenkins's electorate was Sturt, later known as Torrens, a neighboring electorate to Hartley. I have found myself imagining him, a book salesman from the US, spending time in the leafy green areas near the foothills, surprised at the sight of a koala, as I often am, when I am at the gums with Tim and the kids. I was born in Houston, Texas, and spent the first 27 years of my life in a suburb just north of there. When I was 3 years old, my mom made the decision to go back to university to become a lawyer. She was the first in her family to go to uni. And over the next 7 years, as she completed both her undergraduate degree and her doctorate in jurisprudence, life at home changed quite a bit. I spent a lot of time with extended family, and some of my happiest memories are from those years, especially the time I spent at my grandparents' house in a small town where everyone knew my granddad, Jimmy, as the most honest and trustworthy mechanic around. I would spend my days in Jimmy's shop, following him around, asking questions, and talking non-stop. What's really stayed with me was the way he treated people. He always listened, not just to me and my endless chatter, but to everyone. No matter how busy he was, no matter who walked through the door, they were treated with respect, with patience, and with genuine care. I have a very vivid memory of sitting in the reception area waiting for him to finish up for the night when a woman I recognized from church rushed in. She'd had a flat tire a couple of miles up the road. She was running late to pick her child up from daycare, and she was visibly stressed. But this woman knew Jimmy, so she came straight to his shop praying he could help. He drove us out to her car and quickly changed the flat tire. When she pulled out cash from her purse to pay him, he refused. When we got back into his truck, I asked him why he hadn't taken her money. He looked at me and said very simply, "Because, Jennifer, it was the right thing to do." No big speech, no philosophical explanation, just 7 words. It was the right thing to do. That memory and those 7 words have stayed with me my entire life, as if he spoke them yesterday. But it wasn't just that moment. It was the countless small, consistent acts like that which shaped me. My grandfather didn't teach values through lectures or grand gestures. He taught them by living them. Honesty, respect, compassion. and the importance of doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Those are the values I've tried to carry with me ever since. At home, things were often tight financially with only one income. I relied on free lunches in junior primary school, but honestly, for the most part, I didn't notice it. And that's because we had a strong and supportive extended family around us. My Aunt Donna made sure I always had new clothes for the first day of school. And my parents made sure there was always money for ballet lessons. Which, looking back, I now realize it probably meant my mom was missing out on something, but it meant the world to me. And my dad, when he was home, was always in charge of finding ways to keep me busy on a budget. My favorite activity was him teaching me to drive in an abandoned movie theater parking lot. These lessons started when I was about 8 years old. But this was 1992, and Texas. And it's just what Dad did. When I was 10 years old, my mom was admitted to the Texas State Bar. It was a huge milestone for our family. And at the time, I definitely didn't fully understand what it had taken for her to get there. But over the years, I came to deeply appreciate the sacrifices that she had made. She became my inspiration. She showed me what determination looks like, what resilience looks like, and that hard work truly does pay off. Around that same time in my childhood, in 1994, my mom also began to notice changes in me, at school, in my friendships, and at home. Every parent-teacher conference seemed to include the same feedback. She's easily distracted, and she talks way too much. My mom suspected there might be more to it. She thought I might have attention deficit disorder, and even during some of the busiest times in her life, she took the time to meet with my teachers and advocate for me. She's told me that at one point, a teacher dismissed her concerns, saying, "Girls don't have ADHD." But my mom didn't accept that. She persisted, she pushed, and eventually she had me assessed and diagnosed. That decision made a profound difference in my life. More than that, watching her advocate for me taught me something powerful, that one person standing up and refusing to be dismissed can change the course of someone's life. When I was 12, my mom met my stepdad, and with him came 3 new brothers. I remember our first meeting very clearly. The boys decided it would be a good idea to introduce me to their pet python snake by leaving it on the floor outside the bathroom door. I'm fairly certain that moment took years off my life. Cam, Zach, and Kyle, you 3 taught me patience and humility in a way that only siblings can. Who knew you were just building up my resilience in preparation to become a political candidate? And to my stepdad, Gar, thank you for always treating me like one of your own and for ending my reign as an only child. I'm all the better because of it. When I turned 16, thanks to my many years of highly unofficial lessons, I passed my driver's test with flying colors and got the keys to a bright purple Cavalier, Chevy's version to Holden's Chimera. And along with the car came a sense of independence, and the very first thing I did was get a job. I started working at a daycare, very lightly regulated, I might add, and was quickly moved to front desk duties because of my people skills. The ability to talk underwater was starting to pay off. Not long after, I was recruited to work as a receptionist at the personal injury law firm where my mom worked as a lawyer. I had that job throughout high school and at various points during my years at uni. It gave me an early insight into advocacy, into the legal system, and into the importance of standing up for people when they need it most. During a summer school session at my local community college, I enrolled in a political science course to fulfill a core subjects requirement. And on one of the first days of class, my professor, Nancy Kroll, gave us a questionnaire that quizzed our views on certain social, economic, and values-based issues. When we tallied the results, I was genuinely shocked. After spending my entire life being told that I should be a proud Texas Republican, I discovered that my own beliefs actually aligned strongly with progressive Democrats. I remember thinking, am I going to be allowed back home tonight? But that moment sparked something in me. I became more engaged, I joined student groups, I traveled to Austin to lobby Texas politicians for increased funding for higher education and for community colleges, schools equivalent to TAFE. I also joined the Texas Young Democrats, even in one of the most conservative counties in Texas. In 2004, my professor asked me to help out on a Texas state congressional campaign. And that's where I got my first real taste of political campaign experience. Funnily enough, there was also this Aussie guy staying with my professor at the time, volunteering on the same campaign. But despite being in the same place, working on the same thing, our paths never crossed. Not then, anyway. A few years later, in 2007, the Texas Young Democrats began working on the grassroots campaign for a relatively unknown US Senator from Illinois. I jumped right on board, stuffing envelopes, making phone calls, and knocking on doors. And of course, those efforts proved worthwhile when Barack Obama won that November. On election night, I was at a bar with my professor and her new cohort of students when she mentioned that the Aussie she had once billeted, the same one from the Lampson campaign, was at Obama's victory party in Chicago with his brother and was coming to visit her and her family in Houston. She asked if I wanted to join them for dinner that weekend and then take them out afterwards. It was one of those sliding door moments, one I have never regretted saying yes to. I flew to Australia for my first visit in July 2009, and in classic Adelaide fashion, we started the day with breakfast at Lucia's, and then headed to the hills for lunch at the Lane, and then Tim took me to beautiful McGill for dinner at Penfolds, where after our mains and copious amounts of wine, he took me down to the cellar and proposed. Around that same time, I completed my Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies at Sam Houston State University, go Bearcats, and began teaching special education at the junior primary level. My own experience as a neurodivergent student shaped how I approached teaching. I understood what it felt like to struggle in a system that wasn't built for you, and I was determined to be the kind of teacher who could make a real difference, to be an advocate for students who needed someone in their corner. Teaching students with varying disabilities and learning abilities was incredibly rewarding. There was Zoe, who had Down syndrome. She could be so stubborn, but one hug could shift her mood instantly. There was Riley, who was autistic and nonverbal. I was stunned into uncharacteristic silence the first time he told me thank you. And then there was Austin. He'd been born with fetal alcohol syndrome and adopted by the most beautiful family. Seeing him run into school and into the classroom with such excitement and joy brightened everyone's day. And whilst I loved teaching, the lack of funding in Texas education, in stark contrast to what I have seen here in Australia, made a hard job even harder. A couple of years after getting married, in January 2012, Tim and I moved to Washington, D.C. when he accepted a role at the Australian Embassy working under Kim Beazley. We quickly found ourselves woven into the fabric of Australia's diplomatic community as proud contributors to that world. Lucy was only 3 months old, so I decided not to go back to the classroom and instead transitioned into working part-time as a litigation paralegal for one of the best bosses, Jeff Allen, as a civil rights lawyer, continuing the advocacy work that was so important to me, just in a different way. I worked with some of the most vulnerable people in the community, and one case in particular has always stayed with me. Our boutique firm took on a group of men who had suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. Their case was complex and costly, and several other firms had turned them away because they had been exposed to lethal levels of carbon monoxide while being treated at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility. Many of them were dealing with addiction, homelessness, and mental health challenges, their suffering made all the worse by the negligence of the facility there to help them. But we took the case. I often drove some of the clients to their medical appointments to ensure they showed up on time, getting to know their stories along the way. When the case finally settled years later, one of our clients, grateful as he was, asked me why we had taken the case in the first place, and I told him because it was the right thing to do. And that moment reinforced something I already believed, that advocacy matters most when it's hardest. While our time in DC was filled with incredible opportunities, being surrounded by world-class museums, history, and culture, it also came with challenges that were hard to ignore. At the end of our first year there, about 480 km northeast of us, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting occurred, where 26 people lost their lives, including 20 children. 9 months later, the Washington, D.C. Navy Yard shooting took place, where 12 people lost their lives. Like so many people, I watched it unfold on the news, but this one didn't feel as distant as Sandy Hook. It felt close. It felt like something that could touch any part of your daily life. And then, in early 2017, it did. One morning, Tim and I dropped Lucy off at school like we always did and began the drive into the city for work. We were on the freeway that runs between the Pentagon and Quantico, and I remember noticing several Blackhawks flying overhead. That wasn't unusual, but moments later, both of our phones went off. It was a notification from Lucy's school. They were in lockdown due to an active shooting situation in the area. It's hard to properly describe that feeling as a parent. Your mind goes everywhere all at once. Fear, helplessness, anger, and utter disbelief. Every fiber in your body tells you to turn around and go get your child, but you literally can't. Nobody could enter or leave the school whilst in lockdown. We knew fairly quickly that the school was secure, and we were getting frequent updates, but in the moment, none of that really settles you. That night, our beautiful 5-year-old told us that she and her classmates had been playing the quiet game earlier that day at school, just like they had in their practice drills on her very first day of reception. It was one of those moments that shifts something in you. And for us, it confirmed that it was time for a change, that it was time to come to Australia, to make Adelaide our home. After packing our entire lives and Tim's political memorabilia, we said our goodbyes to our family and friends in the US and made the move to the other side of the world, a move made even trickier by the fact that I was nearly 5 months pregnant with Terrence. We rented a house in McGill, just a street away from the home Tim had grown up in and where his mum still lives, and we've spent the last nearly 9 years building our life here, raising our family, navigating the cost of living pressures that so many families face, and becoming part of a community that welcomed us so warmly. I returned to work as a legal assistant in early 2019 and eventually progressed into the practice manager role under the leadership of Michael Atz. Through that work, I developed a strong understanding of employment law, union advocacy, and industrial relations, areas that deepened my commitment to fairness and to standing up for working people. At the same time, I threw myself into community life. When Terrence attended Campbelltown Community Children's Center, I joined the management committee where we helped their brilliant leadership team navigate through the unprecedented COVID years. Lucy was at McGill School, so I joined the governing council and nearly every subcommittee, and I proudly served as chair of the council for the past 5 years. The school principal, John Iannunzio, and I have joked numerous times that it's always better the enemy you know, but truthfully, I consider him a friend, and I'll be sad when Terrence finishes there in a few more years, as the entire school community is truly one to be cherished. Until this point, I had been a proud permanent resident, and the day I became eligible for Australian citizenship, I applied. In preparation for the test, I studied the resource booklet from front to back. And while I can confirm that Donald Bradman's batting average was not required knowledge, what stood out to me was the emphasis on participation. The booklet talked about being an active member of your community by joining local organizations, volunteering, and participating in political life. When I had my citizenship ceremony in March 2022, I didn't imagine just how fully I would embrace that idea. But here we are. Being someone my community can count on has always mattered to me. I've always looked for ways to contribute, to show up, and to make things better. And joining the Labour Party felt like a natural extension of that. In fact, it was one of the first things that I did. But becoming a candidate, that was something I had never really imagined for myself. After many conversations with my family and a lot of reflection, I realized it was an opportunity to take everything I had learned, every value instilled in me by my grandfather, my mom, my experiences, and bring it to a bigger stage. Throughout the campaign, those values guided me. I knew the most important thing I could do was listen to the people in my community, to hear their concerns, understand their experiences, and try to connect in a meaningful way. Because at the end of the day, the great privilege of being elected as the member for Hartley is not just about politics, it's about the people. And I met some incredible people along the way. People like Anita, who had recently decided to retire after her role was made redundant because of AI. She spoke to me about the uncertainty that brought, but also about finding joy in things she loved doing, like baking. Adam and Julia welcomed me into their home over some of the best coffee I've ever had, where we spoke about the pressures so many families are facing, cost of living, childcare, and education. And then there was Janet and Charlotte of the McGill Matters community group, both of whom live just one street over from me. They each spoke to me so passionately about preserving the green space in McGill, not just for today's families, but for future generations as well. Those conversations mattered to me because they reminded me what this role is really about. It's about showing up, it's about listening, and it's about doing the right thing, just like my grandfather taught me all those years ago. Thank you.